Lena, Chris, Evan, Sophie, and Maya. 5 friends bound together in a group chat they called the Circle. What began as harmless jokes and late-night conversations soon turned into a chain of disappearances, cryptic messages, and a terrifying truth. One of them wasn't just a friend, they were a killer hiding in plain sight. You're watching Narrated Mysteries, where real stories of crime and tragedy are told in detail. Subscribe and join us as we uncover the darkest secrets hidden behind ordinary lives. In a small suburban town where nothing extraordinary ever seemed to happen, 6 friends built a bond that felt unbreakable. Their friendship wasn't rooted in grand adventures or dramatic events, but in the simple comfort of knowing they always had each other. They studied together, celebrated birthdays, and even when life began pulling them in different directions, one thing held them close: the group chat they had jokingly named the Circle. It was their safe space, a constant thread that connected them through every stage of growing up. The chat was filled with the usual chaos of inside jokes, half-finished memes, and late-night rants about work or relationships. Some days, conversations stretched for hours, with everyone chiming in until their phones buzzed non-stop. Other times, a single photo or sarcastic comment was enough to keep the thread alive. To an outsider, it would have looked like meaningless chatter, but for them, it was proof of their closeness. They trusted each other completely, never imagining that trust could be twisted against them. Chris was the prankster, always sending cryptic jokes that no one really understood. Lena kept the group together with her bubbly energy, the first to check in if someone went quiet for too long. Evan was quieter, but his rare one-liners always made the group laugh harder than anything. Maya leaned on the others when life felt heavy, and Sophie, steady and sharp, was the one who noticed the small things everyone else missed. Each of them believed they knew the others inside and out. What they didn't realize was that hidden among the stream of messages, one of them had darker intentions. Their cheerful chat room wasn't just a digital hangout anymore. It was the stage for a story that none of them were prepared to live through. Lena was always the loudest voice in the chat. If the conversation slowed, she picked it up with a funny story from work or a random photo she snapped during the day. She hated silence, both in real life and online, so when she suddenly stopped replying, everyone assumed something unusual had come up. At first, her friends teased her absence, sending playful messages and tagging her in jokes to pull her back into the conversation. Hours turned into a day, then 2, and the silence stretched on. For someone like Lena, who thrived on attention and connection, it felt completely out of character. The group tried not to panic. Maybe her phone broke, or she was taking a break from social media. Still, a strange unease crept in when her messages stayed unread. Sophie was the first to suggest that something wasn't right. She checked Lena's other accounts' no posts. No comments? Nothing. Maya admitted she had tried calling, but the calls went straight to voicemail. By the end of the week, the light-hearted excuses no longer held up. When local news reported that a young woman named Lena Anderson was missing, the group chat shifted instantly from jokes to shock. Her photo appeared on the television screen, the same smiling face they had seen countless times on their phones. Police described her as last seen walking home after dinner with a coworker, never making it back to her apartment. Her family pleaded for information, while detectives urged anyone who knew her to come forward. The Circle, once a hub of lighthearted chaos, now buzzed with fear and confusion. Each friend asked the same question, but none could answer it. How could Lena, the heart of their group, simply vanish without a trace? The group struggled to adjust to life without Lena's constant presence in their messages. Days felt heavier, and every ping of the chat carried a weight that hadn't been there before. Then, one evening, Chris sent something strange. It was a blurry photo, almost out of focus, showing what looked like a wooded area. No caption, no explanation, just an image dropped into the thread. At first, the others brushed it off as one of his usual attempts at being cryptic. Chris was known for strange jokes, so no one asked questions. Still, the photo lingered in the chat, a shadow they couldn't quite shake. A few days later, the news broke that Lena's body had been discovered in the forest on the edge of town. The announcement hit each member of the circle like a punch. Shock turned to dread as they realized the setting described on television looked eerily similar to the picture Chris had sent. Sophie scrolled back through the chat history, staring at the grainy image until her chest tightened. The trees, the angle, even the light in the picture, all of it resembled the footage being shown on the screen. The group exchanged panicked messages, some insisting it had to be a coincidence, others demanding an explanation from Chris. He brushed it off, claiming he had found the photo online and thought it looked cool. The excuse didn't sit right, but nobody pushed harder. Maybe they didn't want to believe the alternative. What unsettled them most was timing. The photo had been sent before the discovery was public knowledge. How could Chris have chosen that specific image, so close to where Lena had been found? For the first time, trust in the group began to crack, and suspicion quietly took root. The police investigation into Lena's disappearance quickly shifted after her body was found. Detectives began retracing her final hours, speaking to coworkers, neighbors, and anyone who might have seen her that night. Naturally, her closest friends were questioned. Each member of the circle was interviewed separately, their phones requested for review. It seemed routine, but the weight of sitting across from an officer made every one of them nervous, even those with nothing to hide. The group chat, once a comfort, became evidence. Investigators asked about the tone of the conversations, about Chris's photo of the woods, about any unusual messages Lena might have sent before she vanished. No one wanted to admit that they had noticed strange patterns, but dismissed them. At the time, saying it out loud made it feel more real. They handed over screenshots and explained away Chris's post as a bad joke. After the questioning, they gathered back online to share what had been asked. Sophie was shaken by how much attention detectives gave to timestamps and message history. She realized the chat had turned into a timeline, each message now a breadcrumb in the investigation. Evan pointed out that police weren't only looking at what was said, but at who stayed quiet during key moments. Silence, in its own way, spoke volumes. Chris insisted the police were wasting their time digging through casual banter. He downplayed the photo again, saying it was just something he stumbled across while scrolling late at night. The others tried to believe him, but doubt grew quietly between them. If detectives could see what they had ignored for weeks, maybe there was more they hadn't yet noticed. For the first time, the circle wasn't just a chat room, it was evidence in a murder case. The circle tried to carry on after the police interviews, but the atmosphere had changed. Conversations were shorter, the humor forced, and an uneasy silence often stretched between replies. Lena's death weighed on all of them, but something else made it worse. An unspoken fear that maybe the danger wasn't over. It was during this fragile period that Evan began to act strangely. Normally reserved, he started sending short, cryptic replies. Instead of jokes or thoughtful comments, his messages were clipped, almost rushed, as though he didn't have the time or the courage to say more. One evening, his final message came through. It was a single word: run. No explanation, no follow-up, just that chilling command. At first, the group thought it was another attempt at dark humor. But when Evan didn't reply again, the mood shifted instantly. They waited for him to resurface, to send another message, clarifying the strange outburst, but his icon stayed dim. Hours turned into days, and just like Lena, he had vanished. News of Evan's disappearance broke within the week. Friends and family said he had been last seen leaving his apartment late at night, carrying nothing with him. There were no signs of a struggle, no obvious explanation. The circle's remaining members scrolled back to that last word he had left behind, reading it again and again. Run. It didn't feel like a joke anymore. It felt like a warning, Fear seeped into the chat. Sophie wondered aloud if Evan had discovered something about Lena's death and paid the price for it. Maya admitted she hadn't been able to sleep since. Chris stayed oddly quiet, only chiming in occasionally with dismissive comments. With two friends gone, the group could no longer deny that something dark was hiding among them. Sophie spent sleepless nights scrolling through the old messages, her eyes burning from the glow of her phone screen. She couldn't stop replaying Evan's final word in her head, trying to make sense of it. Something inside her whispered that it wasn't random. Determined to find answers, she read weeks of conversations, not skimming like before, but studying every detail as if the chat itself were a puzzle. That was when she noticed it. Before Lena disappeared, Chris had sent the photo of the woods. Before Evan vanished, a strange one-word message had been dropped into the chat. Sophie traced back further and saw that each time something bad happened, a message or image appeared that didn't quite belong. The pattern wasn't obvious at first, buried under casual chatter, but once she saw it, she couldn't unsee it. They weren't coincidences, they were warnings, or worse, signatures. She shared her discovery with Maya, who reacted with disbelief at first. But when Sophie pointed out the exact dates, the timing lined up too cleanly to ignore. It felt as though someone in the group was leaving breadcrumbs. Small tokens that seemed harmless until the aftermath revealed their true meaning. The realization made the chat feel sinister. Every new notification set their hearts racing, every message analyzed like a threat. They began second-guessing each other's words, replaying months of conversations to see who might be capable of such cruelty. What terrified them most was the possibility that Evan had figured it out before them. His final message runs less like fear and more like a desperate attempt to warn the rest. The circle was no longer just a group of friends talking. Paranoia crept into the circle like a poison. Every message, no matter how small, carried hidden weight. A simple emoji could spark suspicion. A delayed reply felt like avoidance, and silence was treated as guilt. The easy trust that had once defined their friendship was gone, replaced by the knowing fear that one of them was orchestrating everything. None of them said it outright at first, but the tension was visible in the way their words became sharper, shorter, more careful. Sophie began to catalog their behavior, convinced the killer was revealing themselves in subtle ways. Maya grew distant, often checking in, but never saying much. Chris, once the loudest, became defensive whenever the past was mentioned, brushing off their worries as paranoia. Even Sophie caught herself wondering if her own growing obsession made her look suspicious. It was as if the group had turned into a circle of mirrors, each reflecting doubt back at the others. The chat itself, once a comfort, now felt dangerous. Every notification carried dread, as though the next message might signal who would be targeted next. They avoided meeting in person, each too afraid of what might happen in the presence of someone they no longer trusted. Instead, their fear brewed online, where words could be twisted and motives hidden behind a screen. Some nights, Sophie wondered if the killer enjoyed watching them unravel, feeding off the paranoia, tearing their bond apart. It was almost too perfect a group, destroying itself, while the culprit stayed invisible. But one truth became clear. The danger wasn't outside, stalking from the shadows. It was inside, nestled within the group they had once called their safe place. And with every passing day, that circle felt tighter, suffocating, and impossible to escape. Maya was the quietest of the group, often observing more than speaking, but even she couldn't escape the growing unease. One night, while scrolling through her phone in the dark, a notification popped up not from the circle, but from an unknown number. The message contained a screenshot of their private chat, complete with the nicknames and icons only they would recognize. Her blood ran cold as she stared at it. Underneath the screenshot was a short caption, "I'm closer than you. Think." Her first instinct was to believe it was some kind of cruel prank, but dread sank deeper the longer she looked. This wasn't a random troll. Only someone inside the group could have access to those messages. The realization left her paralyzed. For weeks, they had whispered about the possibility of a traitor, but seeing proof written out in stark black and white shattered any hope that it wasn't true. Maya debated telling the others immediately, but fear stopped her. What if the person who sent it was already watching, waiting to see how she reacted? If she accused the wrong person, it could make her the next target. Instead, she sat frozen, the glow of the screen painting her face pale, while the rest of the room felt suffocatingly dark. When she finally did share the message, the group erupted in panic. They demanded answers, each pointing fingers, each desperate to deflect suspicion. Chris mocked the idea, claiming it had to be faked. Sophie, however, wasn't so quick to dismiss it. To her, the message was undeniable proof. The killer was inside the circle, reading everything, staying one step ahead. The group's safe space had officially turned into a trap, and none of them knew who held the knife. Sophie had reached her breaking point. The endless suspicion, the missing friends, the taunting message to Mayat, all pointed to one undeniable truth. Someone in the circle was hunting them, and waiting for the police to figure it out felt like giving the killer more time. She decided to take control. If the culprit was hiding in plain sight, then she would force them to reveal themselves. Her plan was risky, but desperation left little room for caution. Late one night, Sophie typed out a message in the chat. She pretended to be careless, announcing that she couldn't sleep, and planned to walk near the abandoned railway tracks just outside town. She dropped details, the exact spot, the time. She would be there, knowing full well anyone who read it would understand she was going to be alone. To everyone else, it looked like a casual update. To the killer, it would be bait. After sending the message, she immediately contacted the police. She explained her suspicions, begged them to wait near the tracks, and prayed they would take her seriously. They agreed, though with hesitation, warning her of the risk she was taking. Sophie didn't admit it, but she was terrified. If her plan failed, she might not get another chance. That night, the tracks were eerily silent. Sophie didn't show up in person. She stayed hidden nearby, with officers watching the area. Hours passed, and the cold air gnawed at her nerves. Then movement broke the stillness. A figure appeared, lurking at the edges of the abandoned station. The police closed in quietly, their flashlights slicing through the darkness. Whoever had come hadn't expected company. Sophie's heart pounded as she waited for confirmation. This was it. The trap had been set, and someone had taken the bait. The figure near the tracks tried to slip into the shadows when the police lights cut through the dark, but it was too late. Officers swarmed, and in the chaos of shouts and footsteps, Sophie caught a glimpse of the face she had hoped not to see. It was Chris, the same Chris who had filled their chat with bizarre jokes, the same Chris who had brushed off suspicion whenever the group grew uneasy. Now, cornered and caught, the mask he wore among friends finally slipped away. When they searched him, his phone was the first thing the detectives seized. What they found inside chilled them more than the night air. Hundreds of deleted photos were recovered, some of Lena, some of Evan, many taken without their knowledge. Screenshots of their private chat were carefully organized, along with disturbing notes where Chris had drafted the cryptic messages he later posted. It was clear he had been planning his every move, embedding clues in plain sight. Feeding on their confusion, Sophie watched from a distance as he was led away in handcuffs, his expression disturbingly calm, almost proud. To the rest of them, he had been a friend, a class clown, someone harmless. But in truth, he had been testing how far he could go while staying hidden. The photo of the woods, Evan's final warning, even the taunting text to Maya, they weren't accidents. They were trophies. The police confirmed what the group already knew in their hearts. Chris wasn't just part of the circle. He had used it as his stage, manipulating their trust while documenting his own crimes. The reveal was horrifying, but what made it worse was the realization that he had never needed to pretend very hard. The trial that followed was nothing short of devastating for the survivors of the circle. Sitting in the courtroom, Sophie and Maya listened as prosecutors laid out the timeline of Chris's actions in chilling detail. He had been methodical, almost obsessive, carefully planning every step while hiding behind the mask of friendship. The evidence was overwhelming: his deleted files, his patterns of communication, even GPS data, placing him near the scenes where Lena and Evan had vanished. Each revelation felt like another betrayal, as if the memories they once cherished with him were being twisted into weapons. What shocked them most wasn't just the crimes themselves, but the casual way Chris had blended them into everyday life. While they laughed at his strange jokes, he was testing the boundaries of what he could reveal without raising suspicion. While they leaned on him as a friend, he was documenting their vulnerabilities. The same hands that once typed supportive messages were the ones that prepared their suffering. For Sophie, the betrayal cut deepest. She had always prided herself on noticing the small details, yet she had missed the darkness growing right in front of her. Maya admitted she no longer trusted anyone outside of her immediate family. The trial wasn't just about justice for Lena and Evan. It was about grappling with the horrifying truth that someone they had trusted with secrets, laughter, and years of memories had been a predator all along. When the verdict was read and Chris was sentenced to life in prison, there was no sense of victory, only hollow relief. The circle had once been their safe space, a place for friendship and escape. Now it was nothing more than a scar, a reminder of how easily trust can be weaponized. Even after the sentencing, the circle still existed on their phones. None of them could bring themselves to delete it. Part of it was grief, part of it was fear, and part of it was the quiet hope that keeping it alive would somehow keep the memories of Lena and Evan close. But the chat sat untouched, a silent relic of what used to be their safe haven. Days turned into weeks, and though Sophie and Maya tried to move on, the weight of betrayal clung to them like a shadow. Then, one night, Sophie's phone buzzed. It was a notification from the circle. Her stomach dropped. She hadn't seen that name light up her screen in weeks. With shaking hands, she opened it, expecting maybe Maya had finally broken the silence. Instead, there was a single new message. 2 words. Did you miss me? The timestamp was current. The sender was marked as Chris's account. Panic shot through her as she dialed the police. They reassured her that Chris was still locked away, monitored, and accounted for. There was no way he could have sent it. Yet the message was real, staring back at her from the screen. Maya received the same notification minutes later, and both of them sat frozen, their minds racing with possibilities. Had Chris found a way to reach them from prison? Or had someone else gained access to their private chat? The thought that another unseen figure might now be inside the circle was almost worse than the truth they had already endured. The chat fell silent again after that. But Sophie and Maya never forgot. Every time their phones buzzed, they braced themselves, half expecting another ghostly message. The circle was no longer just scarred by betrayal, it was haunted.